The information contained in this podcast is an expression of opinion and does not constitute investment advice. This is the Gold Money Foundation podcast with Dominic Frisby, keeping you up to date with expert opinion on precious metals and the markets.
Hello, I'm Dominic Frisby, and I'm sitting at the PDAC in Toronto, in Canada, the world's biggest mining conference. And next to me is sitting Miguel Santillana. Miguel is an economist from Peru. He's a journalist. He's a professor of economics at 3 different universities in Peru. And he also works in a certain capacity with the mining industry. So, Miguel, thanks very much for coming on the show and talking to me.
Well, thank you for the invitation.
Now, Miguel came up to me after my presentation and said that was some very interesting stuff that you said there. And then we got talking, and we very quickly got talking about the let's say the behaviour, the comportment of Canadian junior companies in Peru. And Miguel, you were saying that often the locals aren't that crazy about the way some of the Canadians behave.
Yeah, the reason is that since we have these new mining laws in Peru, 1991, mining investment in Peru has risen exponentially. But the problem is that the Peruvian countryside has been closed since October 68 till August 1990 because we have a nationalistic government.
Okay.
A protective, nationalistic Latin America, the dictatorship, you know. And then although we had democratic governments, they follow up what the military junta left as policy, economic policy. So we were overprotected, financial repression, and we have very high taxes for imports. Since 1990, we opened our market. Plus, we welcome foreign investment. The only big mining investment in Peru since 1968 to 1990 was a Southern Peru Copper Corporation mine called Cuajone. This company was owned by Azaraco of the U.S., and when this company got nationalized in Mexico, Grupo Mexico took over Southern Peru Copper Corporation. But that was the only big mine developed during those years. Since 1990, and we open ourselves to the world economy, and we have these new mining laws. Peru is very well known since, colonial times for its mines. But the issue is that the countryside has been closed to foreign investment. We had a civil war, we have terrorism. So, after 25 years, then suddenly somebody shows up with a piece of paper saying that they have a concession. And what does a concession mean? Does this guy own my property?
Yeah.
So you have lots of questions from the peasants thinking that, what is this gringo up to?
Yeah.
Okay, so there were questions about what are the limits of a guy that comes forward with a concession.
And your Canadian perspective is perhaps doesn't have the sensibilities to the locals that he should
Absolutely.
have.
One of the main concerns from the point of view of the government is that when these junior companies show up, they generate lots of expectations.
Okay.
And
so they're promoting themselves there as well as here.
Well, that's the issue. And nobody explains to the people that we're going to look around, and if we find something, this will become a mine.
Yeah.
But as you know, the attrition rate of ideas to projects to reality, that means that, people get overrated expectations. And because of that, and because of the bad information given by the government, because that's also a public policy responsibility to inform your citizens what's going on with the industry and what are the limits of the guy that shows up with a concession document. There's a lot of mishandling of information, and then you have all these NGOs and interested NGOs that through lies or half-truths generate panic in the peasants, and that's why you have all these social revolts. So it's a combination of generating high expectations, none or very low information from the governments to the citizens, and vested interests from NGOs that are openly anti-capitalism, anti-foreign investments, and so and so.
Okay. Do you think attitude, are Canadians starting to behave better, or locals start to get more used to things?
Well, I'm going to show you. Actually, the Canadians have generated their own framework for responsible exploration.
Okay.
And this is brand new. This has 2 years.
Okay.
Old. And they've done their homework, and they have learned from the mistakes. The problem is that we as a country are left with the mistakes, that they become social unrest.
Okay, I see. So, are you? I mean, I know you're not a financial man, but are you bullish about Peru mining in Peru at the moment?
Well,
are you bearish? Are they
No. As you explained in your talk, there's a big opportunity for countries that export commodities, because the world does not end in Europe, the world does not end in the USA.
Yeah.
So we have a big market in Asia, and India is growing, China is growing, Brazil is growing, Peru is growing. So we have good expectations for all the prospects that we have in Peru. In the mining sector, we have $40 billion in prospects, okay? And if you add energy, hydroelectric plants, gas, and whatever, we're talking about $55 billion of investment for the next 5 years. The issue is how to attract foreign capital, how to manage internal domestic politics, and how a government in Peru that came from the left wing should appear as a responsible, centered government.
It's Humala, isn't it?
Yes.
Do I pronounce that correctly?
Yes.
Humala.
Yeah.
And, when it was clear that he was going to win the election, and then he won the election, a lot of newsletters said, that's it, Peru's finished, get out of Peru, we've got another socialist government in South America.
No.
But actually, he's been more mining friendly than one would expect.
Well, I'll tell you something. When I was young and rebel at the faculty, we generated the government proposals for a guy called Fujimori.
Okay.
1990. And the idea is that since Fujimori, every guy that wanted to win the election came through their left wing.
Okay.
Because people want change.
Yeah.
And if you come from an underdeveloped country like Peru, you understand that we need change. But what Peruvians do not understand is if the change is the Marxist-Leninism or market economics. Because what we had before was neither.
Yeah.
Right? So, since 1990, Peru discovered that we can do well-behaved fiscal and monetary policy, things that you forgot in Europe. Yeah.
Do you run a budget surplus?
We run a budget surplus. Our debt is less than 20% of our GDP. Monetary policy is really tightened.
Peruvian stock market has outperformed the Canadian exchanges last year.
Absolutely. Although we lost money last year.
Yeah, but you lost less than everyone else.
Yes, absolutely. And we are really bullish in these 2 months. We've made 25%.
That's very good.
In 2 months. So let's put it this way. I think that the last year we grew 7%. Although we had all this political turmoil, we grew 7%.
Yeah.
And the idea is that what I was saying is that since the 1990s, people in Peru want to change. But what we have assessed with Fujimori and the other guys that followed is that we have generated through economic growth a brand new middle class, not only in Lima, but in other provincial cities.
Yeah.
And those guys have learned to be a consumer, to be a citizen, and defend your rights and fight against, the banks and whoever promises to provide a service. And then if you're not happy with the service, okay, let's go to the, your Consumers Federation or things like that. So we are learning market economics. What we had before was the traditional Latin American populist state.
Okay.
And we didn't have social class. We have like social settlements, the rich.
Yeah.
Yeah. So market economics has really opened not only the market, but also the minds, especially of the new generation, that think that they don't need to go abroad. They don't need to be immigrants.
Yeah.
Around 10% of Peruvians are immigrants in Europe, Japan, and the US. So now they're coming back.
That's interesting.
They're coming back.
Same thing happened with Ireland. Now, so as an investor, I mean, if you put money into a junior resource stock, you're taking on 1,000,001 different risks.
Yeah.
Chief among them being the fact that what this company is actually exploring for doesn't exist, or what they hope exists doesn't exist. But then on top of that, you're also, if you go into certain countries, you're taking on a whole host of political risks as well.
Yes.
Your assessment would be that, correct me if what I'm saying is wrong, but Peru is a country that is rich in natural resources, that has a history of metals and other commodities, and at the moment it's a country that's open for investment. It's a safe place to put your money.
It's open for investment, and what
I mean, if I strike gold and I find a 1 million ounce deposit, am I going to find myself having to face all sorts of royalties to the government?
No. There are two. You will have to pay 30% income tax.
Yeah.
And 77% royalty on operating revenue.
Okay.
But you discount that as a cost.
Yeah.
So you pay less income tax.
Yeah. Okay.
The issue is that the problem that Humala has is that he leaned on the left-wing small parties to win the election. And within 5 months, he kicked out all the leftists.
Okay.
Even my professors. Some of them thought that they will be members of the board of the central bank.
So is there a feeling of betrayal?
There's a feeling of betrayal. And what I told my professors before this second round election was, come on, remember 21 years ago, we helped a guy called Fujimori.
Yeah.
And he kicked us out within 2 years of government. Well, Humala have kicked out all my professors within 5 months.
So is this because he's a control freak, or is it?
No. The reason
he just wants to get rid of left-wing influence.
No, the issue is that one thing is to be a candidate. Another issue is to be responsible for the life and well-being of 30 million people. Mm-hmm. And he knows that although people would like a revolution, we can make changes through reforms. And it's more intelligent to do reforms that think that very idealistically in a revolution. So it doesn't make sense to make a revolution to the first century if you steer well, if you are the captain and you steer well the ship. Okay, we can do reforms, but we can have open economics. We can be friendly with foreign investment, and if we make a buck, everybody's happy. So the issue is, but also the state must be strong enough to make foreign investors respect contracts.
Yeah.
So it's not that we are not law-abiding, but the private investors must also comply what's in the document.
Absolutely. It's a two-way thing.
Yeah.
Well, Miguel, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. Let me just talk you through my trip to Peru that occurred in 1995, 96, something like that, when I was a young man in my 20s. I came overland. I did the standard Peruvian tourist trail.
Machu Picchu.
I did Machu Picchu. I came over from Bolivia, did Cusco, Machu Picchu, and I met an Argentinian girl and had a glorious love affair with an Argentinian girl for a while. And then I went up to...
You were fighting the Falklands in Machu Picchu.
And then we went up to... she's become a big soap star on Argentinian TV. So anyway, I sort of stayed with her. But anyway, I don't think I had that much choice in the matter. But anyway, and then we went up to... We went up to Lima and then drove down and we did Pisco.
Yeah,
and
Paracas.
And Paracas, and wonderful. And we did that boat trip where you see all the sea life. I mean, it's just glorious. And then the most amazing thing I think I've ever seen in my whole life was flying above the Nazca lines. Yeah. And in fact, if you type in Nazca lines into YouTube, I think I'm narrating the main documentary on there, just in my other job. So there we go.
Thank you very much for that.
The Nazca lines. So let's finish on. Were they made for aliens? What were they made for?
Well, to tell you the truth, we really don't know. But I think that concerns me as a Peruvian is that many things that have been done by ancient cultures, we have doubts that have been human-made. And I ask why? Why couldn't we build up the pyramids? Why couldn't we make the Colosso of Rhodes? Why can't we make, the gardens of Babylon? Why not?
Yeah. Well, absolutely right. But anyway, so it's a wonderful country, Peru, and I have many fond memories.
And I think it's time for Peru to show the world what it's made of.
Yeah.
And I think that although we have political issues, I think we are on the right track in economics.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's got everything. You've got mountains, you've got jungle, you've got
Coastal areas.
yeah, wonderful country. Miguel Santillana, do come again, and we'll talk again in a couple of months. But Miguel Santillana, in the meantime, do you have a website you'd like to mention? Or
well, the website is in Spanish, institutodelperu.org.pe of Peru, and that's the institution where I do my research.
Okay, very good. Well, Miguel Santillana, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Subscribe to the Gold Money newsletter at www.goldmoney.com to receive email updates on new articles, videos, and iTunes podcasts from our Gold Research section.